Good morning. I just want to welcome all of our new APs to our training this morning. We're so excited to have you here. This morning, we're going to talk about supervision and effective teacher supervision. Specifically, we're going to be talking about our supervisory styles and how important it is to match our supervisory styles to the teacher level of development. And we all know that our teachers have just such different levels of development. And so we want to make sure that we're matching our supervisory styles to their level of development. So let's just dive right in and get to it. So first, let's talk about the importance of supervision. And we know that supervision is just so critical for you as assistant principals, and for me as the principal. And really, the goal is we want to focus on instruction and good instructional leadership. And so we want to build our teachers up. We want to make sure they're using the best instructional practices. And really, the ultimate goal of improving those instructional practices is to see better student outcomes. And we want to support them in the classroom, and we're going to give them that structured support through supervision. And so that's really why supervision is so important. And we all know this, but I just want to remind us of the importance of supervision in the classroom and for our teachers. And so when we go to supervise, I want us to remember the goal of what we are trying to do. So ultimately, our teachers are either going to grow. And so when we supervise them and we go through conferences and the whole process with them, they're going to grow and improve through our interactions, and they're going to have reflection, and they're going to improve and go back and improve. And we're going to go through that whole process with them. And that's going to be about 95% of our teachers are going to grow and improve. But we are going to also have some teachers that might not. And so we're going to have to make some judgments about their willingness to adapt and to grow. Some might not want to adapt and grow. And so we might have to make a judgment call there. So if they're unwilling to grow or they just can't, the goal might be non-renewal or termination. And we can talk about that as well. And so hopefully that will be for less 5% or less. And if we've done our job well and we've hired great teachers, that should not be happening. But things come up. Life comes up with people and they just are unwilling to adapt and grow. And so sometimes that might be the goal when we're doing our conferences and supervision, is to record that data and make decisions about non-renewal or termination. But ultimately, we really want our teachers to grow. So number one is really the goal. So when we supervise, we really need to recognize that all of our teachers are on different levels of growth. And so we need to recognize teacher diversity. And so today we're going to talk about the differences in abstraction in teachers, their levels of abstraction and their level of commitment. So let's talk about those two areas, what they are, and how to recognize the levels in teachers. So first, let's talk about abstraction. So first, what even is abstraction? So when you go into a classroom, you're really going to be looking for a teacher's ability to identify classroom problems, whether it be classroom management or if they can adjust to instructional strategies. And so you're going to say, okay, how high or how low is a teacher's level of abstraction? So a teacher with a high level abstraction can monitor and adjust and change throughout even the lesson or throughout the year. So if something changes within their lesson, they can say, oh, I need to fix this. Or even throughout the year, if their data is showing little growth, they can adjust their teaching strategy. A teacher with a high level abstraction is situationally aware of what's going on in their classroom. So they're going to have great classroom management skills. And they're going to respond to what's happening in their classroom. They're going to use effective teaching strategy. They know a lot of teaching strategies, not just one or two that they know that are tried and true that they're going to keep coming back to. But they're going to know a lot of different teaching strategies, and they're going to use one that's appropriate to fit the moment in time. And then they're also going to recognize student engagement and understanding. And so if they're not getting student engagement, they're not going to say, oh, that's the fault of the student. They're going to say, there's something wrong with my teaching practice. And they're going to come back and they're going to reevaluate that. And so that's a teacher with a high level of abstraction. They're going to problem solve. They're going to go back to the beginning. But a teacher with a very low level abstraction, as you're observing them, they might not even recognize that there is low student engagement. They are just going to keep trucking along with that lesson. Throughout the year, they're not going to look at that data. They're going to see the data and they're going to say, oh, that's the students. I just have a low class this year. And then as you're observing them, they're going to just keep pulling from the same few lessons that they know. It's going to be the same from the year to year. They just don't have enough tools in their toolkit to really be able to solve the problem. They're, like I said, they're going to stick to what they know. They just don't have the wisdom and the understanding to really go outside of their comfort zone to know what they are doing. So when we find a teacher that has a low level of abstraction, they are just really struggling. We need to find out why. So it's not enough to say, okay, this teacher's just not doing great. I'm going to mark them down as, being like just a low level struggling teacher. We need to find the root cause. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor finds out that you're sick, they need to find out the root cause. What is causing this cold? Because if it's a bacteria, that's something different than a virus, and you need to treat that differently. So first, do they have a low level of problem solving skills? Do they just need to learn more? Do they need to learn more tools, instructional strategies? Because that is something that a professional development might fix. Or do they have just a very low level of situational awareness? Are they in a classroom where there's a lot of behaviors going on? And they are just ignoring it. So is their metacognition, their situational awareness just very low? They might think they are doing a fantastic job. And you might be the one to say, hey, did you notice this going on? Did you notice the students playing around? Did you notice that your data is not improving? And they might go, oh my gosh, no. And so that might be something that you as the AP need to say, hey, let's look at this together. Let's kind of dig in and find out why this is happening. And then there also might be something going on in their personal life that is affecting work. And so we all know that we are not just teachers, but we're people. And so if there's something going on in their personal life, they might not have the ability to problem solve in the classroom. And so we know as APs, our job is also to provide support. And, we are somewhat counselors at the same time. So we might have to come in and support them on that front as well. So we as APs need to figure out, do they have a high level of abstraction or do they have a low level of abstraction? And so that's the first thing we need to figure out. Are they able to problem solve, not just classroom management, but instructional practices as well? And then we need to find out why. All right. Also, we need to find out their commitment level. Now, this is pretty self-evident, but a teacher's commitment level is just their general attitude towards teaching and their instructional responsibilities. So a teacher who has a high commitment level is going to say, I love teaching. I am just ready to teach this level. I'm ready to teach this class. I love math. I love ELA. Now, they're going to see the problem if they're like, oh, this just did not go well, but I'm going to follow this through. And then they're going to seek improvement. And so they're going to say, this was a great lesson, but I'm going to try to improve it. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see next year how I can make this better. On their T-tests, on their goals, they are writing goals. They're just like, oh, I'm just so into this. They want to make learning more fun. You walk into their classroom, they're doing experiments. The kids are up, they're motivated. And on that flip side, you have another teacher who's going to say, why bother? These kids just don't care. Or they're going to say, what's in this for me? I'm not getting paid a lot. Again, they're going to say, it's not my fault. It's these kids this year. I just have a low class this year. Or again, they just don't even see the need for change. They just don't want to change. And so you might have, again, with both abstraction and commitment, you might have someone who's kind of in the middle on both of these things, but usually it's going to be a high or a low. And so we're going to have to figure out what is the teacher's level of commitment here. And so usually in newer teachers, you see a high level of commitment. Obviously, they are new to the profession. They have not been tainted by negative experiences with students. And then you sometimes on the other end, teachers who've been teaching for a long time can sometimes be tainted by bad experiences. And so they might have a low level of commitment. And again, we want to find out why. We have to address the root cause. So are they burned out? So if you have a teacher with a low level of commitment, ask them, are you burned out? And find out why they may be burned out. They might have a situation going on in their personal life again. They might just be burned out. They might need a break. Are they teaching the wrong subject? You as an AP and I as a principal need to ask, do we have them in the right grade level? Do they not like teaching kindergarten? Not everybody is cut out to teach littles. Not everybody is cut out to teach fifth graders. We need to make sure people are in the right space, or they might have been teaching a grade too long. It just might not be where they need to be. Is there a lack of trust in quote unquote the system? So we know that people don't trust administration all the time. They don't trust the education system. And this can be true for teachers as well as outsiders. So we need to make sure that our teachers trust us, that we are transparent with them, and that they know they can trust us to give them a fair evaluation. And so a lot of teachers come from different districts where they are not given fair evaluations. And so we need to build that trust. Again, personal life, low level of commitment. It's hard to come into work and give your best when you are going through something very difficult in your work, in your home life. And so we need to help them with that. And then also, do they fear change? Change can be hard. If there's a new curriculum, very hard for new teachers, but especially hard for older teachers who feel like how they were doing it was just fine before. So they might not have a great level of commitment to that curriculum because they just don't want to. They don't want to change. So we need to find out the root cause and really help. So now that we've found out the level of commitment, the level of abstraction when we're doing an observation on a teacher, we're going to move ahead and just talk about the essential elements for a productive conference. So we've found out the level of abstraction, we have found out the level of commitment. So we need to diagnose that teacher. Like I said, just like a doctor would diagnose, we're going to diagnose and say, what is effective and ineffective? What's happening in that classroom? What is working and what is not working? So we're going to talk about that in a minute, what supervisory styles are we going to now use. So, and then prescription, we need to now give that teacher a prescription. What must or could change in that classroom and with that teacher? What do we need to kind of adjust? What do we need to work? What must change? Like what is a non-negotiable and what maybe, we're going to try to change. And then we need to establish a timeline because we know things can't just have a open-ended timeline where things just go on forever. We need to establish a checkpoint where teachers' behaviors, they're going to change and where professional growth activities are going to be completed, because we need to tell them, just like we give students deadlines, we need to tell them, okay, this needs to be changed by this certain time because they deserve a timeline. So now we've looked at teacher levels, but now we're going to look at aligning how we supervise them based on their development levels. So here you have the three approaches. We have a directive approach, okay? We have a collaborative approach and a non-directive approach. So as you kind of get on this timeline, you're going to have different levels of collaboration between the teacher and between us, between the principals. So a teacher with a very low level of commitment and abstraction is going to need a lot of help from us. So that's going to be the directive approach. Okay. So this is at the lower development. They just have a very low level of commitment. Everything is the student's fault. They have a really hard time their abstraction level problem solving, they're going to need a lot of help from us. So this is going to be a direct approach. So we're going to provide clear expectations. We're going to structure our support. They're going to need a lot of basic skills, and they're going to need a lot of confidence. So that's what we have here at the low end, right? It's high supervisor control, not a lot of teacher control, because they just don't really know what to do. So we're going to come in and we're going to help them in a very kind way. And we're going to say, hey, what do you think? Right? What about this? Do you think this would be good? But really, we're more telling them in a kind way, like, why don't we try using think, pair, share? And then let's look at your data. It's not really working. So let's try this. Okay. And then for teachers in the middle, maybe they have a high commitment, but they have a low abstraction. So they didn't even know something was a problem in their classroom. They didn't even know that students were off task, right? So we're going to come in and we're going to partner with them because they're highly committed. They're so excited to be in the classroom. We're going to collaborate with them. Okay. And we're going to foster a partnership with them, and we're going to give them some more autonomy. We're going to let them think it through, but we're going to kind of just guide them in a collaborative style. And then for those teachers that are just on it, they are so highly committed, and they have a high level of abstraction. They are adjusting their styles as they teach. They are adjusting, their classroom management as they teach. There's not a whole lot that we need to add to that, but we're just gonna, we're gonna give them a little bit of supervision, but we're gonna let them really take the reins because they know what they need to fix. And so they're gonna come in and they're gonna say, you know what, I think I need to improve this. And we're gonna go, great, you do that. So for another visual here, we have this chart here. So again, a teacher you can see with a low level of commitment, but a high level of, a low level of abstraction, but a high level of commitment is going to be in quadrant 2. So we're going to be collaborative with them. And again, a teacher with a low level of abstraction and a low level of commitment is going to be directive. We are going to direct them. So I'm going to give a little example here of a conversation you might have after you've observed a classroom and you're like, okay, so here we go. So you're the AP and you say, how do you feel the reading block has been going? And, she says, it's okay. I just got through it. Well, what do you notice about the student engagement? I don't know. Some kids work, but some don't. That's just pretty normal. Well, what do you think that tells you about their learning needs? I don't really know. They just need to stay on task. Well, what strategies have helped when students struggle like this? I've tried a few things and nothing really changes. Okay, so what options do you see for adjusting instruction during the block? I'm not sure. That's just how it usually goes. Well, what support might help you to move forward? I don't know. I'm doing all that I can. Okay, so we can see here that it's not going well. Okay. And she doesn't really have enough tools in her toolkit, right? She says, I don't know. It's just not going well. I've tried a few things. That's just what they really do. She's sticking to what she knows. So I think we're going to put her right in the low level of abstraction. She's just not really getting it, right? And the AP says, well, what have you tried? And she's like, I've tried a few things. So she's not really going outside her comfort zone. So I think we're going to put her in the low level of abstraction, right? So let's think about her commitment level. Well, she's like, I don't really see the need for change. She's not really motivated. She's like, well, it's not my fault. It's the kid's fault. Why bother? I think she even says, why bother at one point. She doesn't really see the need for change. It's just kind of, it is what it is. It's her really general attitude. So if we go over to our chart here, she clearly has low level of commitment, low level of abstraction. So we're going to come to her. And when we diagnose her, we're going to diagnose her as what? Low level, low level. And we're going to do a directive approach of supervisory. We're going to use the directive approach when we supervise her. So what that means, what does that mean? We're going to say, okay, here are some things that you need to be doing when we prescribe what she needs to be doing, right? And so if you were to go back to her, you're going to prescribe, like, you're going to use these specific strategies. You're going to walk around the room now. Okay. And you're going to talk to them. You're going to have them talk, maybe think, pair, share, right? You're going to have them do this instructional strategy and this instructional strategy, right? You're not going to give her, it's not a collaborative, because in that last conversation, you tried to be collaborative, and what happened? She didn't respond really at all. She just said, I don't know. So obviously collaborative does not work for her. So you're going to be very directive with her. And then you're going to give her a timeline. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to come back in a week or 2 weeks, and I'm going to see, have you put these things in place that I have asked? And I'm going to see, have you done it? Right. And if not, we're going to come back and we're going to do it again. And I'm going to do it with you, or I'm going to have you go visit another teacher, right? And so these are some things that you might put in place. So you're going to diagnose, we've diagnosed that she needs a directive approach, right? And then you're going to prescribe some specific things for her to do, right? In a very directive way. She's not really going to get a choice. So this is high supervision, low teacher input. She's not going to get a lot of input. And then you are going to give her a timeline for that. And then, so why this is important. So this is going to build trust and collaboration, and it's going to improve our teacher retention. Okay, so if you misalign, if you misdiagnose a teacher, okay, and so if you go into that teacher we just talked about and you give her a very non-directive style of supervision, what's going to happen? Okay, everything's going to stay the same, and she is not going to improve. And she's just not going to improve. But what's going to happen? More importantly, her students are not going to improve. And that's the whole goal of improving supervision, is improving student outcomes. And we want student outcomes to improve, right? And then again, if you have a teacher that is great, has high abstraction, high commitment, and you go in there and you try a very directive approach with that teacher, what is going to happen with that teacher? She is going to get very frustrated and feel like you are micromanaging her. And she doesn't need that. She is great. She has a lot of metacognition about her instruction, about her classroom management skills. She doesn't need you to come in and say, these are all the things I want you to do, and I'm going to come check on you. She doesn't need that. She's doing great. And then a teacher in the middle in a collaborative, she might need a little input from you. But if you don't give her any, if you give her a very non-directive, she's going to feel a little bit lost. She might need a little. So as we think about these things, I want you to think about, what are you observing in the classroom? I want you to think, what am I seeing? Diagnose it. What support does the teacher need to improve? What's the prescription? And then, is my supervisory approach aligned with their development level? Am I using the right supervisory approach? Am I using directive when I should be using collaborative? Am I using collaborative when I should be using non-directive? And then, have I communicated my expectations clearly with them, and have I documented them? Make sure you document, especially if we're talking about those people where our goal is to what? Right? Non-renewal or termination. And again, we don't want that. We want growth, but there will be those people. And then lastly, reach out. Okay. So if you're unsure, ask for advice, and then seek guidance early. If you have a question, ask me, ask your other APs. And then I believe that strong leadership seeks support. Okay. So you're not on an island, and we want consistency over speed. I'm not asking you to run through these as fast as you can, these observations. I want you to be accurate. And again, our key takeaways is we want to identify that level of abstraction and commitment, and then find out that reason. Because again, if we can increase those levels by fixing that problem and finding out the problem, let's figure out the reason behind it. Let's diagnose, right? And then we need to tailor our supervisory approach to their level of development. Okay, so we'll either use directive, collaborative, or non-directive. And again, if you're not sure, ask. And then we're going to diagnose that problem. We're going to prescribe a solution or solutions, and then we're going to set a timeline for teacher growth. Okay, so if you have any questions, come see me. My door is always open. I am so excited you are here with us, and it's going to be a great year.